Good morning, Europe. It is Wednesday, the 7th of September. I'm Helena Humphrey, and here are your headlines.
The UN calls for a security zone to be set up around the Zaporizhzhia power plant in Ukraine to prevent a nuclear disaster. It's been the site of constant shelling, with both sides blaming each other. Britain's new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has formed the most diverse cabinet in UK history, without a single white man holding the country's four most important ministerial positions. And the European Union is proposing to make it more expensive and harder for Russian citizens to get visas as the war in Ukraine rages on. The head of the UN has backed calls by its atomic watchdog for a safety zone to be established around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Antonio Guterres made the announcement at an emergency meeting of the Security Council, called by Russia to discuss the IAEA report.
Russian and Ukrainian forces must commit not to engage in any military activity towards the plant site or from the plant site. Zaporizhzhia facility and its surroundings must not be a target or a platform for military operations. As a second step, an agreement on a demilitarized perimeter should be secured.
Both Russia and Ukraine are blaming each other for recent shelling of the plant and the ongoing threat to it.
We regret that in your report on implementing safeguards in Ukraine since April to September of this year, which appeared literally a couple of hours ago, the source of shelling is not directly named.
While we controlled the station, there was no threat of radiation disaster. As soon as Russia came, the worst-case scenario immediately became possible.
Nuclear inspectors last week visited the Russian-occupied plant. Shelling continued while they were there. The IAEA head warned of a very real risk of nuclear disaster. Although the agency was careful not to blame either side, it said there was an urgent need for interim measures to prevent a nuclear accident caused by military action. And all relevant parties need to agree on a protection zone to avoid further damage.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday attended sweeping war games with China in his country's far east, in a show of military muscle amid the tensions with the West over Moscow's action in Ukraine. According to the Kremlin, over 50,000 soldiers will be involved in the drills, using 140 aircrafts and 60 ships. Participating countries also include several of Russia's neighbours, including Syria and India. The week-long exercises are largely intended to display growing defence ties between Russia and China. Putin's presence at the war games signifies the importance the Kremlin is placing on this relationship building with participating nations. For China's part, Beijing has refused to criticise the Kremlin's actions in Ukraine and has accused the West of provoking Moscow. India has also refrained from imposing sanctions.
Up against an energy price catastrophe, the Lithuanian government will present a package of financial support, which they say will be among the largest in the EU, measured by the share of GDP.
We're speaking about the sums of near or above €1 billion, and this is related just to the price of energy resources. Income support measures will, of course, also be foreseen in the budget.
The measures equate to around 2% of Lithuania's economy and will cap electricity and gas prices while providing support to businesses. The plan also includes a variety of energy-saving measures, such as setting heating limits for public buildings at 19 degrees and air conditioning to 27 degrees, as well as mandating remote work on Fridays and Mondays. Investment into green energy will be encouraged. Meanwhile, in France, some sports facilities such as swimming pools and ice rinks are already being closed. One countrywide pool operator saw their energy costs hit €100 million, up from just 15 million. Transport could be hit too. Fewer trains are reportedly being considered this winter as a way to save energy, meaning those that do run will be very busy. And local mayors are researching whether they can turn off streetlights after midnight without compromising safety.
Sweet celebrations, but the UK's new Prime Minister has a daunting to-do list topped by soaring energy bills and a fast-approaching economic recession. To help her, she needs her own top team. So Liz Truss spent her first few hours in number 10 sacking some of the old cabinet and creating her own. The appointments came fast and furious, but with an emerging theme. A predominance of those who backed her for the premiership, but it was also noticeably diverse. Heading the list, a new Chancellor or Finance Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng. Suella Braverman becomes the new Home Secretary, replacing Priti Patel. And Therese Coffey gets the health portfolio and becomes Deputy Prime Minister, making the Truss and Coffey top duo the first all-female one in history. James Cleverly becomes Foreign Secretary, replacing Truss herself. While Ben Wallace broke the pattern and remains as Defence Secretary, a position he's held since 2019. Creating cabinets and appointing their support staff can take days, but Truss has to hit the ground running. She has her fans, but also her critics.
Why am I here is because I support Liz Truss, and I think that she'll be a great Prime Minister for our country.
I think that the new Prime Minister will, in many ways, disappoint the country. I don't think she's going to be the right fit for the job. She used to be a Liberal Democrat, now she's not. She used to be a Remainer, now she's not.
Typically for London, it rained on Truss's parade for her first day in the job, but that's the least of her problems as she now gets down to work.
Well, new British Prime Minister Liz Truss has now spent her first night behind that black door of number 10 Downing Street, and she gets off to a roaring start today. She'll have the first meeting of her cabinet this morning. Some familiar faces over recent years won't be around the cabinet table. The likes of Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, she has resigned and been replaced. Dominic Raab, who was the Foreign Secretary and then Justice Secretary, he is also gone. And then Kwasi Kwarteng has replaced Nadhim Zahawi as the new Chancellor. So she will be focusing the minds of her new team. She'll then head off the short distance to the House of Commons for her first session of Prime Minister's questions up against Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader. And then she'll need to get back into work because she's expected to announce tomorrow or Friday a new energy policy. Now, she had been reluctant to intervene too heavily in this during the course of her campaign, talking about the fact she'd bring in wider tax cuts to income tax, corporation tax and VAT, and she said that would trickle down and help people. But it's become clear to her team that the situation is now too grave, so she's expected to announce some kind of loan policy where people's bills will be frozen for this winter, but over the course of as many as 20 years they will pay that amount back in their energy bills just to help them through the course of the next winter. Now, it is going to be a quick turnaround for her to get her cabinet in shape, because in just about 4 weeks' time she is going to have a party conference where she'll be expected to set out policy in all manner of areas. She's also likely to want to get out on the international stage. I think a first stop will be to see President Zelensky in Kyiv to reaffirm both to him, the Ukrainian people and the world that the UK is still very much, despite the change of leader, lockstep when it comes to its support in repelling the Russian invasion. And she's also likely to want to get to Washington DC as well to reaffirm what is called the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States. Boris Johnson didn't particularly, it seemed, get on well with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's administration thought that he was, one, too close to President Trump, and two, Trumpian himself. And Boris Johnson had claimed during the Brexit referendum that a new deal with the United States, a free trade deal, would be something easy that could be done quickly. Well, that has proved to not be the case, both with President Trump and Joe Biden. So we'll see whether or not Liz Truss has more success in doing that. Vincent McAviney, Euronews, London.
Many houses were demolished by these Nazi Knights of the Air, as their leader is pleased to call them. These are inevitable, but the spirit of London remains indomitable. Look at this lot, searching for souvenirs. Typifying the resolution displayed throughout the kingdom, the capital stands defiant. The Battle of London, grim as it is, will be won by London.